Story 1. All these soul-crushing jobs that are focused on prestige would decline. You would see many people quit their jobs to work in creative fields. Story 2. Being an artist or a wine taster would become much more popular, especially niche occupations. Hospitals, insurance companies, and utility providers would become severely understaffed. Why get paid to be yelled at all day or to pick up other people's garbage when you could earn the same amount as a streamer or by playing the piano full-time? Story 3. Who the fuck would work in finance without the monetary incentive? Absolutely a dog's hit industry. Story 4. For the lazy, any job that involves sitting somewhere and not doing much. Story 5. Expect a gradient of understaffing with the greatest shortages in occupations that have the highest barriers to entry, from Doctor of Philosophy degrees to master's, bachelor's, and associate degrees and professional accreditations. Why incur debt and study hard to earn the same pay as others? Only those truly passionate about their fields will remain, and some of those will still leave. Jobs with no barriers to entry and meaningful perks will attract the most applicants. Story 6. Just because every job paid the same does not mean people would be qualified for them. Experience, education, and temperament would still be roadblocks to switching careers. Story 7. Those who keep you up at night would be unpopular. Everyone would try to work in a job they felt was right or fun. Story 8. Being a lifeguard would be a popular job, and you would probably be hard-pressed to find people willing to spend the money, time, and effort required to become a physician. Story 9. Not enough information. Are people paid slave wages or paid enough to survive and have a small treat now and then? I think this would make a difference. Story 10. Something in sports. Even if I'm terrible at it, I'm still getting paid to run around doing something fun all day, and so are my friends. Story 11. I am trying to think of a job with the lowest effort and skills required. The only one that comes to mind is a school crossing guard. I could do that for only 4 hours a day, be paid like everyone else, and have holidays and summers off. I am all for that. Story 12. Creative fields such as writing and acting are overstaffed. Finance, technology, and healthcare are understaffed. Story 13. I know a man who works in a fish plant. He took the job because he was broke. Although he earns slightly above minimum wage, I do not think many people there work by choice. Working in a slaughterhouse seems even worse. It likely has a very high turnover rate, and many workers may earn less than minimum wage because undocumented immigrants are being exploited. It sounds like a living hell. I would rather return to the call center where I used to work than do that. Story 14. Those who work on oil rigs as diverse face extreme isolation and considerable danger. The only reason anyone would do it seems to be the pay. Otherwise, it sounds like my worst nightmare come true. Story 15. Overstaffed. All of the fun jobs. Understaffed. All of the hard or necessary jobs. Story 16. I feel that more people would become teachers. At least I hope so. Story 17. Food service would be booming. When you are poorly paid, you have to find a way to eat. Working with food fills that need. Story 18. Be the person who holds the stop sign for construction projects. Story 19. Male sex worker. Video streamer. Spa reviewer. Because you said every job is paid exactly the same. That does not mean you have to be able to get clients or produce anything of value that is not already being produced. Story 20. Researcher. Wouldn't publish anything. Just live life and travel. Story 21. Do you still have to interview for the jobs? Is there still a limit on how many people can be in each profession? Who sets those limits? Do people without jobs also get paid? This sounds like the Communist Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. We can look at what they did. Spoiler, not very well. Story 22. Nursing would be a ghost town. It is already short-staffed every shift, and the remaining nurses pick up the slack. After this change, there might be one nurse per floor of the hospital, which would be absurd. Story 23. Wall Street would collapse overnight. No one wants to move numbers around a database if there is no financial gain. Story 24. I would work in the botanical gardens, a 5-minute walk from my house. Fuck commuting. Story 25. Many current minimum wage jobs such as retail and food service could become overstaffed as people leave high-stress positions. Management, manual labor, and healthcare roles would likely be understaffed. Story 26. I would quit my job in aviation and get one at McDonald's. Less stress and bullshit. Story 27. More people would work for non-governmental organizations, especially in entry-level positions. Story 28. A bus driver would be popular. I would drive people around and meet new people. Story 29. I would still be doing what I do but would be paid more. I hope the original poster meant more money. The nonprofit world is a whole different kind of work. Story 30. I would work at Lowe's in tools and hardware because it is fairly easy and you get to help people. Story 31. If all jobs pay the same, why would anyone in their right mind work at a job they do not like? They would choose the job they consider the easiest or that requires the least effort. Story 32. No one would take high-stress jobs. People would pursue what is most fulfilling to them. Civil service jobs would increase sharply. Sales jobs would decline sharply. Story 33. I would love to go back to doing core science and mathematics all day. That would be amazing. I know it is a middle-of-the-road job, but I think, at least within my circles, it could become overstaffed. Story 34. We are about to have the safest crosswalks in the world. There will be more than 100 crossing guards on every corner. Story 35. I would become a teacher to inspire young children, but the pay is low. Story 36. The real question is, would all jobs be accessible to everyone? Being a doctor might pay as much as being a streamer or a wine taster, but the level of competency in most quality-of-life jobs would probably increase drastically due to competition. Story 37. I was an emergency medical technician for 8 years, and I would have returned to school to become a paramedic if the pay had been livable. I became a nurse and I love it, but I miss working on the ambulance. Story 38. I work from home as a county or state worker. I would put people on hold all day and go play video games or do something productive. Story 39. Understaffed. Almost any customer-facing retail job. I cannot comprehend why anyone would want to put up with that when they can do anything else for the same pay. Story 40. Very dangerous jobs like crab fishing, working on oil tankers, and cave welding would disappear. Those jobs exist because they offer very high pay and employers do not always scrutinize applicants closely. Some cave welders might remain because they are adrenaline seekers, but most private, life-threatening professions would be gone. Story 41. We would find out which government officials were there to help their country and which ones came for the money. Story 42. The question does not address whether these jobs would exist in unlimited numbers or whether anyone could get them. For instance, the President of the United States would have either 0 or 1 person in the role, not more than 1. Things probably would not change that much. An oil roughneck who earns 3 times the median salary would not likely become a schoolteacher. Not only because they are not trained for it, but also because schools would not be eager to hire them. General managers of Walmart stores, highly compensated and often the best-paid employees in their towns, would probably become understaffed because the positions require high commitment and are high stress. I expect doctors and nurses to be understaffed not because many would quit, but because many would reduce their hours to 20 to 40-hour work weeks. Overstaffed roles would include Uber drivers and food delivery drivers. They are already oversupplied during non-peak times, and if the jobs became salaried regardless of productivity, many people would rush to work there. Story 43. College professors would vanish. Nobody would need to go to school to earn more money. Story 44. Teaching would be booming with summers off, union membership, full benefits, leaving by 3, and the satisfaction of educating a new generation. Story 45. It depends whether the requirements are the same. Any job that requires you to invest your own money to obtain may decline quickly. In a society where schooling is paid for by taxes, more people would choose jobs because they have an aptitude for them rather than for financial reasons, which could increase the quality of services in some areas. Many people now take positions for social status and money rather than interest. That would likely become less common. Story 46. It depends on what exactly the same means. Are we talking about chief executive officer salaries or McDonald's burger flippers? If we are talking about low-end salaries, then professional sports teams would be nearly empty if only those who play for the love of the game remained. Story 47. Information. Are infinite quantities of all types of jobs also created? Story 48. Any equine job depends on pay. It could be great or terrible. Story 49. How do you define a job? Would they all pay the same regardless of performance and time spent? How those questions are answered will change the outcomes. If anything is defined as a job and time and performance do not affect pay, many people would become YouTubers, uploading one low-effort video a week and spending only 1 hour on it. If time and performance do affect pay, people would still keep some office jobs. Story 50. Salaries suck. I was never happy working for someone else. Story 51. 99.9999% of kids would actually become virtual YouTubers or influencers. That's scary. Story 52. Is live streamer included in this? If I get paid the same amount as everyone else while streaming games with 0 viewers, then it is a great deal, laughing out loud. Story 53. The Postal Service would have to dramatically modify how it operates and quickly. It would be severely compromised in this scenario. Postal workers would be out delivering. Story 54. Youth coaching would become extremely popular. Many people already coach as volunteers or for near-volunteer wages. If coaches were paid a living wage, people would line up at the door to do it. However, college and professional coaches would quit immediately. Story 55. Creative arts roles. Musicians, poets, artists, dancers, and actors. These are people pursuing their passion who rarely get paid. Story 56. What is the wage? Are janitors now paid the same as chief executive officers or vice versa? Story 57. Dog walking has seen a huge increase. It is a really nice, low-stress job that makes you feel good. Story 58. Social media influencers would be ubiquitous. There would not be many people working for the railroads anymore. Story 59. I think most people answering this question are not taking into account that just because all jobs pay the same, it does not mean an unlimited number of positions would exist. People would be less motivated to take on high-stakes jobs unless they genuinely love them, but most things would not change because, at the end of the day, people need to be paid and must work somewhere. Story 60. A really difficult aspect of this question is that certain jobs would fluctuate in popularity, but that assumes that all prices stay the same. If doctors are paid teacher salaries, that is only a bad thing in the context of a teacher's salary being insufficient to purchase the goods and services you need. A teacher's salary stops being a motivator to change careers if everyone is both being paid and must pay similar prices. For example, how many people would become doctors if they could save enough with a doctor's salary to go to medical school? Story 61. I have wanted to own a bar my entire life. I would spend my days doing paperwork and maintaining it, and my nights serving my patrons. Story 62. One would still have to qualify, interview, and be hired, right? I think it would balance out. You would probably get more artists. Story 63. Many hobby and creative jobs would become overstaffed. People would open craft breweries, wineries, or woodworking shops, or spend their days writing screenplays or novels. Most of the output would be poor, as it often is now, but people would still receive the same pay. Understaffed would be jobs that are physically hazardous or extremely boring. The latter describes many jobs in the United States. Determining which jobs are most affected depends on how higher education is handled in this theoretical world. It would not make financial sense to spend money on college if it only results in the same pay you could have earned otherwise, unless it leads to an easier or higher status job. It makes even less sense if the field has a high dropout rate, which adds financial risk. Engineering could be underfilled. It is often perceived as boring, lacks high status, and many students fail to complete the program, risking wasted tuition. Similarly, people would be unlikely to spend money on medical school if it only yielded the same pay as someone without a degree, so physicians could also be understaffed. Story 64. Welcome to post-World War II China up to 1980. Story 65. If this were the case, I'd probably work in a little coffee shop and brunch cafe forever. Maybe I'm a psycho, But those jobs are so fun, social, and low stress. Story 66. I think people would still gravitate toward work-from-home jobs or roles where you send a couple of emails a day. I'll tell you one thing. No one would be working in construction. Story 67. Not much would change. You cannot be overstaffed if there simply are not enough jobs for those positions. People will still have to take other jobs that match their skills. You do not choose a job by salary alone, but by what is available and matches your skills. Story 68. A security job sounds fun, though. You just sit and watch Netflix all night. Story 69. Telemarketing would end. I have never met anyone who liked doing it. Simple jobs such as stocking shelves or working as a secretary would be far more attractive. Story 70. I'd go back to working at a golf course instead of practicing law. Need me to pick the range? No problem, boss. Just driving around a football-sized sand patch, listening to audiobooks completely alone while people take potshots at the cart. Plus free golf. Story 71. Private equity is completely unredeeming and soulless at every level. Nobody does it for any reason other than enormous piles of money in exchange for working nonstop for decades. It is also obviously understaffed. Story 72. I was going to say that healthcare support work would be understaffed, but to be honest, if we assume everyone magically has experience in every job, you would find many people who would not normally do this work because the pay is poor suddenly doing it because they find it rewarding. I have worked in many jobs, including highly paid roles, and I am currently doing support work to gain experience to move into a different professional area. I expected to hate it, but it is actually quite enjoyable and rewarding. Some staff are disengaged, and that is because they feel stuck in the job. Story 73. A huge influx of new streamers would hit the market. I am sure. Story 74. It depends on whether being a domestic engineer counts as a job. Story 75. Michael Bolton in Office Space nailed it. It is a nonsense question because if everyone had $1 million, nobody would clean up the mess on the floor. Story 76. Most information technology jobs would become severely understaffed. Many people enjoy the work, but the usually high salaries are a huge motivator for both me and most information technology professionals I know. I work in cybersecurity. This is especially true for technical help desk and other customer-facing information technology roles. I think much of the service sector would instantly collapse. Why keep taking poor attitudes from customers if you have another option that is equally incentivized, at least financially? There would likely be a large increase in artistic creators, which is not bad in itself, but imagine if every person who thinks they are the next Michelangelo because their mother praised their macaroni pictures could suddenly make a living from low-quality art. Imagine the current state of modern and artificial intelligence art amplified threefold. Story 77. Online video content would become even more oversaturated, and platforms would go bankrupt because half the viewing audience would be streaming rather than watching. Rest in peace ads and subscriptions. The hospitality industry would disintegrate overnight. General hospital care would improve because support staff are getting a fair shake and generally want to work there for moral reasons. But medical care would decline because few people would risk the legal responsibilities of being a doctor without additional pay. Also, pornography would get much worse quickly. Many more men would become involved, both in front of and behind the camera, which would destroy any sense of safety that women would have. Story 78. Overstaffed. Park ranger. Understaffed. Roofer or construction laborer. Story 79. Understaffed. Saturation divers living in a van at the bottom of the ocean for months at a time while being force-fed helium do not sound like fun. Story 80. Few, if any, would be nurses or nursing assistants for that matter. Certified nursing assistants are already paid very little. Story 81. I would want to do work where I am at home, do not have to talk to anyone, and do not have to spend a lot of time. If I could not do that, I would keep doing what I am doing now, art commissions, and charge 3 times more because more people will have more money. Story 82. If every job paid the same, creative fields like art, music, and writing would explode overnight. People would finally chase passion without worrying about bills. Meanwhile, tough, dirty, or dangerous jobs like garbage collection, sewage work, and mining would likely be left severely understaffed. It would show quickly which careers people actually want to do versus which ones they are forced into for survival. Story 83. Well, I can tell you one thing. I'm not laying any more bricks. Story 84. Overstaffed? That's easy. Game testers, travel bloggers, and dog sitters. If pay were equalized, half the world would discover their passion for sipping pineapple coladas while writing medium think pieces about why Bali changed their life. Spoiler. They will last 2 weeks before realizing a dream job still involves deadlines and an editor who hates them. Understaffed? Nurses, sanitation workers, teachers. Basically every unglamorous job that literally keeps society from collapsing. Do you think Karen is going to swap her new yoga influencer career for cleaning bedpans when the paycheck is identical? No. If we flipped the switch tomorrow, hospitals would look like the set of a post-apocalyptic film by noon, and every sewer would overflow by Friday. But sure, let us all fight over who gets to be the 90th person making a true crime podcast. Society would absolutely thrive. Story 85. I would go back to the job I had in high school making pizza. I really enjoyed it, but I cannot survive on $5.85 per hour. Story 86. There are too many lawyers and not enough janitors. Suddenly everyone wants to argue for a living, but no one wants to clean up after them. Story 87. I would trade being an executive to write children's books for sure. Story 88. Let us say you still need to work full-time hours. People who like their jobs would keep them, cut their hours in half, and take a second job that is the opposite, working that for the other half of their time. I work in information technology security for an insurance company. I would love to do that until lunch and then be a gardener until the end of the business day. Story 89. If pay were equal, passion would rise and undesirable jobs would vanish. Story 90. How unrealistic are we talking? If you still have to get the job but are then paid the same as everyone else, much less would change than you might expect. There is a lot of gatekeeping in the economy, some of it legitimate but much of it corrupt, that ensures many people end up in low-quality jobs. For many, it would basically amount to a pay raise. Under maximum fiction, it is a different story. 90% of the population or more would become stand-up philosophers, receive a guaranteed salary, and be partly responsible for the collapse of human civilization as we know it, or at least as we knew it for a few days under the radical new economic regime. Story 91. Pornhub would need to develop a clips or reels feature because many performers will expect full pay for 3 minutes of work. Story 92. Overstaffed. Mattress testers, wine tasters, and people paid to eat or sleep. Understaffed. People who clean up waste and perform other dirty jobs. Story 93. I worked in fast food. I would show up late, high, in a dirty, wrinkled uniform, and sometimes not show up at all. We drank, had sex, smoked meth, and stole on the job. None of that mattered. I would rather have that level of responsibility than be a pediatric surgeon if the two jobs paid the same. Story 94. I saw a video of someone climbing a tower above the clouds to change a light bulb every 6 months or so. I do not think anyone would do that. Maybe only adrenaline junkies. Story 95. Artistic professions are already massively oversaturated, to be honest. I think every grunt or boring job, such as tax preparation, would be extremely understaffed. Story 96. I think jobs that used to pay minimum wage but require little work would be incredibly popular. Answering phones at a small business or working in a quiet retail store are examples. There is a man at the vape shop across the road who has maybe 10 customers a day. I would want that job. My other interest is painting. How would doing freelance or commission work fare under these rules? If I would get paid the same regardless of how many jobs I do, that could mean a pretty cushy life. Story 97. I don't know. I would either remain a parts guy as I have been for about 30 years, or take a lower role as a parts driver. Story 98. If every job paid the same, I'd probably pick something creative. I think many people would rush to do fun or glamorous jobs. The tough, dirty ones would be left behind. It would change the whole system overnight. Story 99. I cannot really answer the original poster's question, but I believe my answer will still contribute. I would try many other jobs, prestigious or not. just for the experience and to broaden my mind. Story 100. That depends on how much the pay is. Are all jobs suddenly at minimum wage? Are they all a flat $100,000 per year? Or does everyone earn a high-paying chief executive officer salary? This matters because on one hand, many things would become cheaper, while on the other hand, prices could explode and hyperinflation could occur. What about the education required for certain jobs? Is that free now? No one would spend $100,000 or more on degrees if they could make the same amount delivering food. Story 101. Are we discussing the same salary globally or only in the United States? Globally, the median hourly wage is estimated at $4.59 per hour. In the United States, the median hourly wage is about $30 per hour. Likely the easiest jobs requiring the least skill would fill up first. I think there would eventually be a massive shortage of workers in occupations that require advanced degrees, such as doctors, nurses, engineers, architects, and scientists, as well as in information technology roles and in occupations with excessive risk, such as highline power workers, oil workers, police officers, and firefighters. Interestingly, as unskilled wages rise, shortages have already appeared in career fields that used to be considered lucrative. Those shortages would become extreme in this scenario. Story 102. It depends on the salary. Understaffed. If every job paid, say, $100,000, any customer-facing job, especially retail, healthcare, and fast food, would quickly need to offer bonuses and additional compensation to retain people in those high-stress roles where customers are yelling almost daily. Overstaffed. Creative fields. If everyone could quit their day job to pursue creative passions and be paid for it, there would be many local theaters, art collectives, and farmers markets popping up everywhere. Story 103. An ice cream scooper would rank among the top 10 jobs, either highly in demand or overstaffed. You spend your time making people happy and take home delicious treats at the end of the day. Story 104. For some stupid reason, we allowed the rich to dictate wages so that harder, less desirable jobs pay the lowest wages while easier, more desirable jobs pay more. If every job paid the same, the most desirable roles such as chief executive officer, management, musician, and athlete would still be the most sought after, and the least desirable work such as customer service and hard labor would remain the least sought after. Story 105. Se tutti guadagnassero lo stesso, il gioco delle motivazioni cambierebbe completamente. Sovraorganizzate, probabilmente le professioni più facili o con benefici immediati, come influencer, social media manager e barista alla moda, perché attirerebbero tantissima gente che prima scartava lavori poco pagati. Si formerebbero code infinite e regole rigide per gestire la competizione. Sottoorganizzate, lavori pericolosi, faticosi o poco gratificanti fisicamente, come muratore, minatore e netturbino, perché senza incentivo economico la maggior parte delle persone li eviterebbe. Resterebbero pochi motivati per scelta o necessità, con caos o carenza immediata. Interessante notare come lo stipendio non sia mai l'unico fattore. Prestigio, passione e comodità contano anche se non c'è differenza di guadagno. Story 106. Depends on the same salary. If everyone is making $100 per hour, I am working at an animal shelter. If everyone is making $15 per hour, I am working at an animal shelter. Story 107. I am somewhat confused. What pay level is everyone at? I think that makes a difference. Story 108. I would have loved to be a student my whole life. Not a high school student, but an elementary school, college, or university student. I love learning. Story 109. Linemen would be even more understaffed than they already are. We get paid the big bucks because of the danger and difficulty of the job. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.